Welcome back to the weekend. Donald Trump is now defending his racist attack against Vice President Harris after he questioned her racial identity at the National Black Journalists Convention this week. The ex-president said Harris, quote, turned black when it was politically expedient. That is a lie.
She was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
Joining us now, Eddie Glaude is an MSNBC contributor and distinguished professor at Princeton University. And Nina Jankowicz is a disinformation expert and author of How to Lose the Information War. Welcome to you both. I just, Simone, she got the head look. I'm telling y'all. I'm still trying to work out the black part, because I'm feeling a little, I don't know, Greek today, or maybe a little Asian, or what do you say?
I feel as though, and Professor Glaude can correct me if I'm wrong. He's the professor here. But I feel as though that Donald Trump was being very intentional and actually doing something quite sinister on two fronts. First, he is essentially, who is Donald Trump to tell anyone who they are, let alone the current vice president of the United States of America? So that's the first part. But I think the second part, he was trafficking in something that is very sinister, this underbelly of within the, I think, parts of the black community that say, some people are just not black enough. Donald Trump obviously overheard a community conversation somewhere and thought that this was an effective tool to inject into the race. This wasn't just for him to, get himself back into the middle of the conversation. I think he was intentionally trying to give a dog whistle to people who say, maybe the vice president is not what they would call a foundational black American, an American descendant of slaves. Therefore, this is not the black president you all think you would be electing. It is sinister, but it is very intentional, and I think he knows what he's doing. Professor Glaude, what say you?
No, I tend to agree, Simone. First of all, it's great to be back on the weekend again and see both of you. I think that's absolutely right on a certain level. There are those who call themselves ADOS, Americans of African descendants of slavery, and they are questioning whether or not she's black or not. And I think at the heart of that argument and at the heart of what Donald Trump is doing is a basic misunderstanding. Donald Trump is a little bit more sinister, right? There is this understanding of race in the United States that's very structured, that goes back to the one-drop rule. There's a conflation here of racial hierarchy and ethnicity that's going on here. In so many ways, I want to just say that this is a distraction, and it reveals not only how insidious Donald Trump is, but how dumb he is. This is a clown show on so many ways, and I don't want the campaign to get caught up in it. I want the campaign to continue to pursue its message. We're not going back, we're going forward. We don't want to go back to that mess, but those of us who have to address it, we need to address it with the seriousness of history and the seriousness of our moment, I think. But I think you're absolutely right that he's trying to appeal to those ADOS people, Simone. He absolutely is.
Nina, you have this response from the vice president, then I want to get a thought from you on the other side.
And it was the same old show. The divisiveness and the disrespect. And let me just say, the American people deserve better. The American people deserve better.
You are someone who knows this space very well, this disinformation space. To Simone's point, there was a lot of disinformation that was leveled up there, not just tinged, but just infused with racism. The vice president, to Eddie's point, sort of rose above it and tried to refocus her messaging, if you will, to Eddie's point, going forward, not going back. Talk about the difficulty of that when you've got an asymmetrical player like a Donald Trump, who is everything, everywhere, all at once in his stupid and his crazy, up against someone who's trying to run a somewhat linear, forward-moving, focused effort to move the country off of the stuff that we've been stuck in from MAGA and others who've been building up this corrosive narrative around race and ethnicity, et cetera, over the last few years?
Yeah, I think as a campaign, certainly it's really difficult to respond to attacks like that because they're so ludicrous and you don't want to give them airtime. And that's why it's important that we're having these discussions. We're calling these lies out for what they are. I also think it's interesting in the way that the campaign has kind of reclaimed some of these narratives, you know, elevating Vice President Harris as an authentic woman in politics, which it is really difficult to be. And also, you know, one of Simone's points really resonated with me. This is not just a dog whistle to parts of the black community. It's a dog whistle to the racists and misogynists of the country, indicating to them that, you know, this behavior is okay coming from the former president himself. And it's going to be really difficult for them to put that genie back in the bottle. And again, that's why I think it's so important we call this stuff out and say enough is enough. This isn't how we treat women in America.
You know, as Nina was speaking and Eddie said it was a distraction, I went to this Toni Morrison quote. I wanted to pull it up. Toni Morrison once said that the very serious function of racism is distraction. It keeps you from doing your work. It keeps you explaining over and over again your reason for being. Somebody says you have no language and you spend 20 years proving that you do. Somebody says your head isn't shaped properly, so you have scientists working on the fact that it is. Somebody says you have no art, so you dredge that up. Somebody said you have no kingdoms, so you dredge that up. None of this is necessary. There will always be one more thing, which is why I think the campaign is not going to actively respond. And to be very clear, I think the vice president was also responding to Donald Trump's conduct as a whole.
Right.
And much was made about his appearance at NABJ, and I think we can have a conversation about the process of how it came to be and maybe some of the people that were up there on that stage. But this was some of the most serious questioning that Donald Trump has endured, frankly, on the record, live, in the last year, I would argue. You know, this was Rachel Scott who's there in the blue suit, put on a master class here. And Eddie, I think that for the American people, it is important that voters see and hear Donald Trump in his own words. Yes, he's now back in the news, and everybody's like, oh, he was trying to reclaim the narrative. Donald Trump played us all. He did this on purpose. Republicans aren't proud of what they saw on the stage. People who are supportive of Donald Trump are like, this was a dumpster fire. But now we have the clips and Donald Trump in his own words, and it makes it harder, Eddie, for folks to be desensitized to who he actually is and what is actually at stake this November.
Right. When he's not playing on his home field, he looks small. He looks like he doesn't know how to play the game. And so if he doesn't have folk in the audience shouting and screaming for him, his incoherence is in the forefront. His inability to answer questions directly, his inability to tell the truth, his inability to marshal facts. And I thought Rachel Scott and the others held him to account to a certain degree. But I think Toni Morrison is right in this regard. Right, there's an extent to which we want to pull him out of his comfort zones so that folk can see who he is without all of the pomp and circumstance, without all of the glitter and glamour, as it were. We want to see him for who he is, but at the same time, we don't want to diminish ourselves in the face of that nonsense. Right? There's something that, how can I put this? At some point in our lives, we're going to have to tell these kinds of folk to get the hell out of our faces. We don't want to hear this. Next. Right? Move on. And stop playing games, right? To tell them the truth. Because I think in some ways it takes two to dance. He can come in and do his little shtick, and then we participate. No. We don't want to participate in this anymore. And so I think it's important, as we assert ourselves moving forward, that we let the folk who hold these positions know that we're not going to tolerate it. And one of the ways we're not going to tolerate it is going to be a quick dismissal, if that makes sense.
So it does make a lot of sense, Eddie. And Nina, I think that's part of the challenge. I mean, from your own work in this space and trying to understand how the disinformation work, where do people find the energy to Toni Morrison's, very, very eloquent point that those distractions are what you're always fighting up against? And to Eddie's point, how do you then go past that, dismiss those individuals? I look at the amount of time Barack Obama spent trying to prove that he was friggin' born in America. To me, I was like, dude, tell this guy to go off and be president. But we get trapped in that space, trying, particularly as African Americans, after 400 years, still trying to prove we belong here. We have been here. This is who we are. This is our story, against the kind of crap we saw take place on that stage at NABJ with Donald Trump filibustering, blustering, making a lot of noise, signifying nothing.
Well, you know, I think with Harris, they've been really smart to pivot to her record, right? This is a woman who has a almost 30-year record of public service. She has met with President Xi Jinping, President Zelensky 6 times. She has traveled to over 20 countries as vice president, led the country's policy on AI and other things, right? Let's put that in comparison with Donald Trump, who has 4 years of a record of public service, during which he may or may not have committed crimes, right? I think that is a stark contrast. And I loved this week how the vice president challenged former President Trump to that debate. You want to say these things to me? Say it to my face. That is the ultimate show of strength.
There you go.